said about my convincing the rest of the authority to file the lawsuit, it didn't take any convincing. The reaction of one board member is, I wish I had thought of that, because it was so obvious to all of us. And this was a board of experts. It was a reform levy board created after Katrina. We had protection from political pressure, some protection, because unlike all the other boards in the state, once we were appointed and confirmed, we could not be removed by the governor. We didn't serve at his pleasure. My term expired, I was not reappointed. That's why I was removed. These people included from the University of North Carolina, the author of the most sophisticated storm surge model in the world. He's consulted on every time there's a storm anywhere in the world, big storm, they consulted. From California, we had the chief engineer for the state of California overseeing 1,600 miles of levees, coast-to-coast experts. In Louisiana, we had the past president of the American Society of Civil Engineers. We understood the problem, and we also understood the causes. Land loss has many causes. Levees, which you hear about, are certainly one of those causes, and they are a very important cause. But not all the land loss is caused by the levees. I've got just 2 slides to show you. And I also want to make the point, the industry may see me as an enemy. I do not see the industry as an enemy. What this lawsuit is about is 3 things. What you hope every parent teaches their kids. You keep your word, you obey the law, and you take responsibility for your actions. That's what the lawsuit's about. So the first slide, that applies to Lake Manure, it applies to Bayou Corn, it applies to all sorts of places. This first slide, as I said, I only got 2 of them. This is Delacroix. This is downriver from New Orleans. It's in St. Bernard Parish. The first picture up here, this is 1956. The last time this area saw any sediment from the Mississippi River was the flood I wrote about, 1927. So that's 30 years later. It's basically solid land. This slide is 1965. This canal was dredged in 1961. It's still basically, this is now 40 years after the last time it saw any sediment from the river. It's basically the same, but if you look really closely around that canal, you begin to see some deterioration. That canal was dug in 1961. It was a dry well. According to the permit, it should have been closed more or less immediately. This slide is 1989. There are now several canals, several oil operations, and you see significant deterioration centering on the original one, but also extending many other parts of the, I think my battery's dying already. Well, I got this when I gave a speech somewhere. This is the first time I've ever used it. So I suggest some other, I wish I remembered, I haven't forgotten, but it comes back. Okay, so, on the last one. Anyway, 1989, this next slide, 2008. It's basically all water. These canals dug in the 80s. By then, state law, the permits issued prior to the 1980s were issued by the Corps of Engineers. After that, the state got involved. The Corps of Engineers language all includes requiring some kind of restoration effort once these areas are abandoned. The first thing was abandoned in 1961. 2008, it's still there, nothing was done. After the state started issuing permits in conjunction with the Corps, state law, beginning around 1980, was very, very explicit. It said that these areas have to be, once you're done, You have to restore the area as close as practicable to its original condition. Does that look like the original condition?
No, of course not.
These laws were violated. The companies broke the law. What a surprise. The permits under which these things were dredged also require explicitly that once an area, it's the same thing, this is state law, the permits are contracts. The oil company signs them. It's a contractual obligation. The permits say the same thing as the state law, using different language, sometimes requiring backfilling, sometimes requiring something else. And they usually say within 90 days after operations cease or a well is plugged, 90 days. This thing's 1994 was abandoned. This is 2008, or not that one, excuse me, the one down here. 1994 was abandoned. 2008, nothing's been done. It's time that something gets done. This is a map that Garrett Graves and the CPRA have used of what Louisiana will look like in 2100 if nothing is done. We did didn't adjust the map. What we did do is write in the names of towns that are not going to exist anymore. Look where Lafayette is now. Practically beachfront property in Lafayette. NOAA, National Oceanographic something agency, and the Air and Atmospheric Agency, is remapping the coast of Louisiana right now because so much has changed. They finished one parish, Plaquemine. They took 31 names off the map. As they move west, there are going to be hundreds of names taken off the map. As everybody here probably knows, the state has developed a master plan. The master plan has been praised by scientists and environmentalists and passed unanimously by the state legislature. So it's probably the only item that scientists, environmentalists, and the state legislature agree on. The master plan has no funding. They've got whatever comes from BP, which what will go to coastal restoration is an estimated $3.5 billion, but let's say it's double that. They have that money. They have money coming in from offshore revenues beginning in 2017, which this year's annual plan for the CPRA estimates at $110 million to $200 million a year. But in 2017, they also have to start paying back the federal government $73 million a year for the cost share due for the new levee system around Metro New Orleans. So that's what the state has. They have some money from BP to start up, and then they have roughly somewhere between $25 and $125 million a year to build a $50 billion plan. The oil companies sign contracts in those permits, that's contracts, which says they will restore what they damaged. State law says they must restore what they damaged. Keep your word, obey the law, take responsibility. Now, the last thing I'll say, in the legislature this session, beginning in March 10th, the industry and the governor have promised to kill the lawsuit in the legislature. They promised to do that. That's one promise I think we're going to make them break.